I will now recognize Representative Dean Phillips of Minnesota for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my friend and colleague, Mr. Green, for extending that invitation. And I have duly noted your acceptance of that invitation and look forward to you joining us and all of our colleagues as well. I want to thank all of our witnesses for your service to our great nation, to my colleagues, many of whom are on this call who have worn the uniform and have made remarkable sacrifices for all of us. And as a Gold Star son myself who lost his dad in Vietnam, I want to remind all of us there are thousands of Gold Star families out there who know pain that few of us can possibly imagine as we talk about Afghanistan. Secretary Armitage, we've shined some light today and in the past weeks on how corruption undermines our efforts around the world, in Afghanistan, and other parts of the globe. And I really appreciate your earlier comments about how we need to review and affirm our national interests and increase congressional oversight relative to corruption and how we distribute our financial resources around the world. Most of you know that the 2018 NDAA required that state, DOD, and USAID develop a joint strategy for preventing corruption in reconstruction efforts in contingency operations. It was a report that was due in June of 2018, over 3 years ago, and we have yet to receive it. I've raised this matter on multiple occasions. It has been highlighted by Mr. Sopko, of course, the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, but we are still awaiting that. Corruption is undermining our efforts. It must be addressed. And Secretary, you also made an astute observation that one of the reasons we failed to leave Afghanistan perhaps sooner was the result of political fear of losing a war. In quoting you, that the instinct to keep up the fight won over the need to critically review our interests, and that the effort would have benefited from more intense congressional oversight, end quote. I agree with you. I think here in Congress we have the same fears. So with that in mind, Mr. Secretary, what do you think Congress should have done 10, 15 years ago perhaps to address that political cost, especially amongst those who campaign to be tough on national security? And what additional oversight should Congress be pursuing prospectively as we move forward?
Congressman, I might be a victim of my past, like I'm sure you are of yours. I worked on the Senate side for Bob Dole, as is what we used to call AA in the old days, Chief of Staff now. I do want to mention the congressional oversight first, because it's not just a matter, in my view, of HFAC. It's also the Armed Services Committee. There's a different kind of corruption. When we say corruption, most of us think of money or ghost soldiers or officers who don't give the payout to the enlisted, which happened in Vietnam and happened here. That's another kind of corruption. There's a corruption in the armed forces. How many armed leaders did we have in Afghanistan in the first, say, 12 years of our conflict? General McMaster may actually, or General Lute may actually know the number. It's close to 10. Scott Miller, the last one, was the longest one we've had. So that leads to a certain, I got to get my merit badge now, I've got to make my mark now, etc. And it doesn't always leave, I think, room for good choices. Doug knows, HR knows, a lot of our activities in the Korengal Valley, things that were highlighted in the book Red Platoon, this is a corruption of our armed forces. We didn't do as officers what we needed to do to take care of our troops. So don't pigeonhole, I think, just into HFAC.
Can I just go on the record? Can I just go on the record to reject that? That senior officers who commanded in Afghanistan did it for a merit badge? I mean, really? Did you just say that?
Yep, I'd not only say it, I'd repeat it again, and I've said it at NDU at the classes I teach there.
Actually, Mr. Armitage, I'd like to reclaim my time to speak. Mr. McMaster, I'd like to hear your perspective. I got 40 seconds left.
Yeah, I think that this idea of over optimism and confirmation bias, it was clearly there. I think, though, to say that any of our senior commanders were there to do anything but to accomplish the mission and to do so at a minimal cost to their soldiers is disparaging in a way that is completely ungrounded, in reality, because I know these people. Now, I do think that that there was this tendency to always, show progress. This is not a new phenomenon. I wrote about this extensively in connection with the Vietnam War. But I'll tell you, one of my jobs was to pull the curtain back on the infiltration and corruption of state institutions and functions in Afghanistan. Those reports, our work, I'm sure, is available if you can just get it declassified. And there was no effort that I saw to cover that up. There was a reluctance to deal with it from Washington because Washington, again, had created their delusion, right? Their illusion of Afghanistan, what they wanted Afghanistan to be. And that was because they were prioritizing just getting the hell out. So I think that the danger is we're going to learn exactly the wrong lesson, that we should have just left, when the fact is, the problem is from the very beginning, we took a short-term approach to a long-term problem, which paradoxically lengthened the war and made it more costly.
Thank you, sir. Time's expired. We can continue this conversation at our Journal Club. I yield back.